Good morning, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live here in Mackey Arena following Purdue's 99-67 win over Texas Southern. This is your goldenblack.com rap video. Is brought to you by our friends at Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you so much to them for their promotional support. As always, you'll have to bear with me here a little bit. I'm still fighting the final throes of the old pineapple fever I brought back with me from Hawaii. So I'm going to try to make this quick because my throat feels like sandpaper, and it is 11:43 at night, and you know how this goes when I tell you that these things are going to be quick. Anyway, so Purdue wins 99-67 over Texas Southern. Really a bridge game between Purdue's first grueling gauntlet of the non-conference season and its second grueling gauntlet of its December schedule. That starts with two Big Ten games, so we can't call it non-conference. Two, that's right. We can't call that non-conference play necessarily, but when Northwestern and Iowa are followed up by Alabama and Arizona, obviously that makes for a pretty pivotal, a pretty important, a pretty weighty four-game schedule for Purdue, ranked number one in the country, obviously, right now. This was your classic soft landing game that you schedule when you come back from an event like Hawaii, because if you let down, if you're tired, if everybody on your team has the pineapple fever like I have, which a lot of that's the official medical term, by the way. You can go on WebMD and look that up. It's called the pineapple fever. Anyway, if half your team has the pineapple fever, as much of Purdue did, you want to follow up that trip with a game like this one. You have to have X number of these games on your schedule, simply to be able to put together a schedule, but also to fill your season ticket package, things like that. And you want to put one of these games after that trip, just to insulate yourself from any of the pitfalls that might come with some of these really high-end events in really, really far-off locales. So that's what this game was for Purdue. It went about as expected. 99-67. Purdue was up 13-0 before you knew it, and there was no suspense here whatsoever at any point in time. Couple of things that stood out about this game. One was Purdue not screwing around. Purdue, you know, I've said many times on the stuff I write on our site, goldenblack.com, by the way, we have a sale going for 14 more minutes, so go check that out. This won't be posted in time for you to do that, so please disregard. This season is going to come with a lot of maturity checks, a lot of professionalism checks, kind of things like that for a team that is going to have to live this life as hunted, as they have the last couple of years, and have kind of handled it as kind of like a mixed bag in terms of the results. But these games test your professionalism, they test your consistency, they test your maturity. You know, Purdue easily could have just kind of come out here in their flip-flops and phone this one in, and still won by 15 points. And that Purdue came out as sharp as it did and was as emphatic as it was for the majority of this game. There was a little bit of a lull there when Texas Southern had 5 guards on the floor, and Purdue still figuring out some things with its second unit offensively. But Purdue, by and large, didn't mess around one bit, and that's something you really want to see from this Purdue team all year long. No issue tonight. This was sort of the competitive edge, the killer instinct, the no-holds-barred, take-no prisoners sort of mentality, the every cliche you can think of from like an old Sylvester Stallone movie or something like that. Purdue delivered on that tonight. It really stems from, I think, this team's experience, this team's collective maturity, but also its emerging leader, and that is Braden Smith. I don't say that to diminish what your Mason Gillises and your Ethan Mortons and some other guys on this team mean, but just because Braden Smith is such a cutthroat competitor, I just think that in itself really is part of the insulation in games like this that Purdue has as a luxury. He is just becoming a special player. I shouldn't say becoming. he is revealing himself to be a very special player, not only his productivity, but his command of this team, his ability to rise to the moment, his ability to just outwill people, his ability to turn into the Incredible Hulk when he's mad, like Dr. Bruce Banner, and just cannot say enough about what he's become as a player and what that means for this team. Purdue has two superstars now, if you ask me. Superstar might be overstating it ever so slightly because Braden Smith's probably not going to be the National Player of the Year the way Zach-Edey was last year, but I think his emergence this season thus far as a great player has kind of closely mirrored what Zach-Edey was doing a year ago at this time. Now, obviously, Braden Smith's not putting up the numbers. He's not single-handedly carrying a team that also has Zach-Edey the way Zach-Edey was taking that team a year ago and literally carrying it to number one in the country. But I think he's blowing up in much the same way Zach-Edey did last year. There's not the novelty involved. You know, Braden Smith's a point guard, a pretty run-of-the-mill, not run-of-the-mill in terms of his stature at the position, but run-of-the-mill in terms of he's nothing out of the ordinary. He's a great player, but he's not you know, what Zach-Edey is, where he's a one-of-one in all of college basketball. This was kind of Braden Smith's night, and a reflection of the balance Purdue has now. Now, look, Purdue's not going to lose to Texas Southern under virtually any circumstances, but when you can come out and the best player in the country, your star, your centerpiece, your foundation, your whatever it might be, your alpha, your preeminent player, can take 4 shots and you still win by 1,000 and are never challenged at any point in time, I think that speaks to the balance that I've been kind of talking about all offseason. And this was sort of Braden Smith's sort of night here. 19 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds. The box score says 8, but we've retroactively found out that a rebound that Fletcher Lawyer must have been credited with went to Braden Smith after all. So 1 rebound shy of a triple-double. But just the command he has of this team. The 10 assists, he's really a big part of this pace that Purdue can play at. It's really a big part of this formula where they can just wear people down. You bang with Zach-Edey for 3/4 of the game. You bang with Trey Kaufman-Renn for a quarter of the game. And then Purdue with Braden Smith and Lance Jones can just play 100 miles an hour for 5 minutes. And suddenly, you know, the opponent's burning a lot of fuel here. That was not a big deal tonight, but in Big Ten play and in some more of these marquee non-conference games, that formula will come back into the forefront. Lance Jones, you know, under any other circumstances, Lance Jones would be the story of this game. You know, I always say that every shooter has their own individual rhythm, their own sweet spot as a shooter, and Lance Jones clearly is a transition guy. He pulls up behind the play, somebody finds him for a shot he can step into, he's making that shot. And he's really helped change the speed of Purdue basketball. Again, another guy takes 6 shots and gets 15 points. Unbelievably efficient night for Purdue. And the stats are... Hold on, I have to avoid swearing. The stats are screwed up because you had 10 minutes of garbage time again in this game. You were chucking threes, so you end up 13 of 25 when effectively you were probably like 13 of 20. Effectively, not literally. You have 10 turnovers. Effectively, you probably have 7. The box score should look a lot better than it does. But Lance Jones, just an unbelievably highly efficient game for a lot of these guys. The only guy who took more than 10 shots was Braden Smith. The only guy who took more than 6 shots, it turns out, was Braden Smith. No, Miles Colvin took 7, but a bunch of those shots were after the game was decided. So I think there's still some work in progress stuff going on here for Purdue. I think Purdue is, and I'm not just parroting what Matt Painter says. I never do that. Purdue has to make its free throws better. I think this is a good free throw shooting team. Zach-Edey's a better free throw shooter than he's showing. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn and Lance Jones are 2 guys who are going to have to just make the best of it. I think they're going to have to put a lot of time into that. Kaufman-Renn does. Lance Jones' numbers thus far have been pretty consistent with what he did at SIU. But there's that. There's the turnover issue, which was not an issue tonight. I'm talking about it anyway because it's important. And then there's I think Purdue has to figure some things out in terms of figuring out its scoring, where its scoring is going to come from when Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Ross-Ade have cycled out of the game. You saw that a little bit tonight. Purdue, again, kind of plateaued a little bit when its best offensive players were out of the game. I think Painter's still figuring out his rotation a little bit. I think it's imperative that if all three of those guys are going to be out at once, Trey Kaufman-Renn's got to be on the floor. And since he's starting, now you have to configure things a little bit to where you staggered your rotation at the 4 a little bit now, to where now you need Kaufman-Renn in at the 5 or the de facto 5. He might be the 4, but you're going to use him like he's the 5. You're going to play through him. You just have to have some more scoring on the floor after your 3 best offensive players, Braden Smith, Ross-Ade, and Fletcher Lawyer, are out of the game. I think that's very much a process here. Didn't stop Purdue from winning the Maui Invitational. And that's what I said after the games in Hawaii, was that was not a destination. That was a stop on the way. I think Purdue can get a lot better still. I know that's a mouthful when you're number 1 in the country and you're just rolling over people in terms of being 7-0, not necessarily blowing everyone in Maui out, because Purdue most certainly did not do that. You could not be in a better position right now than you are going into Big Ten play. I think things change now. I think Northwestern will be hitting Purdue with folding chairs on Friday, and we're going to be right back in that situation where I'm writing about the officiating, as I always am, when Big Ten play starts. But another hurdle for this team, okay? The last 2 years, Purdue's been number 1 in the country. There's come that game. It's normally been a Big Ten game, I think. It was Rutgers 2 years ago. And then again, I didn't cover any losses last year. I was gone before they started losing games. I think. Rutgers, that game here in Mackey, whatever year that was. Last year? It doesn't matter. There's always that game where, Purdue's number 1, they're rolling, and then everything changes with a Big Ten game, and all of a sudden, life comes at you fast. And this Northwestern game, Purdue's better than Northwestern by a mile, obviously, but it's going to be mud wrestling. It's going to be a dirty game based on last year. If I had to guess, Northwestern does have some combustible guards. It's going to be a lower scoring game. That's the way they like to play. It's going to be one of those games where Purdue has to impose its will. It's Purdue's first real road game that counts. The Arkansas game. I think the Arkansas game is echoing through this 7-0 start, left and right. I think that was a huge deal for Purdue, and it'll show up again on Friday night at Northwestern. But things change now. This isn't non-conference play anymore. This is, rock fight time. And I think Purdue's won games to this point in every way you can possibly win games, pretty much. But now Big Ten play comes around, and Purdue needs to be the best version of itself once again. These next 4 games factor not only into the Big Ten race, and that is important. You want to win the Big Ten again. You don't want to have a team like this and not win the Big Ten like they did 2 years ago. But then also, you've still got these 2 marquee non-conference games coming out of it. Coming out of what will be 2, relatively difficult Big Ten games, I'd imagine, because they're all difficult. This is both conference race time and resume time. So this is going to be a really important stretch for Purdue basketball once again. But they certainly look up to it. This game was another example of Purdue flexing its muscles here. Purdue showing you how it's different and better from last season, and still how much better it stands to get. So I said I was going to cut this short. I'm starting to lose my voice. I failed you once again in terms of cutting this short. So if you've stayed through and watched this whole thing, respect. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. I will talk to you guys again Friday night, in the middle of the night, once again from Evanston, Illinois, when Purdue plays Northwestern up at Welsh Ryan Arena. So thanks so much, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, no matter how congested those materials may be. So thanks, everybody.